Can you believe it? It's finally here. It is the moment that I know you have been waiting for. I've been waiting for this moment. The moment when we inaugurate the 6th cycle of the Parsha Podcast. It's been a tremendous run. I cannot believe how far we've gotten. We thank the Almighty for every opportunity to teach Torah, to study Torah, to spread Torah, and to do another Parsha Podcast. It's Friday. It feels like Monday because we had Simchas Torah on Wednesday. So yesterday felt like Sunday, and now it's Friday, and it feels like Monday, and now is the deadline if we want to get the 6th cycle of the Parsha Podcast starting on the right foot. We have to start right now. I didn't really have enough time to prepare this Parsha Podcast, but of course the Almighty helped me, and He helped us, as He does every single week. And even though it's Parshas Bereishis, the most difficult Parsha of the year, and it feels like Monday, even though it's already Friday. And yesterday there was no school, and we spent most of the day disassembling the sukkah, and I had a doctor appointment and a dentist appointment for my kids. There was not enough time, but we have no choice. We are in the Torch Center. We are ready to start the 6th cycle of the Parsha Podcast with the help of the Almighty. Let us begin. And I'll tell you, we had a tremendous amount of divine assistance in the 5th cycle of the Parsha Podcast. We were, with the help of the Almighty, able to do a Parsha Podcast, a brand new Parsha Podcast on every single Parsha this past year. And I'm not embarrassed to tell you that I actually printed out all my notes. I use notes, of course, when I speak to y'all. I don't want to come unprepared. That is a disservice. That would be disrespectful to you, the audience. I always prepare ahead of time. I don't just shoot from the hip. I don't just speak extemporaneously. I prepare, make sure that I know what I'm talking about, make sure that it makes sense, make sure that I'm going to offer you what you deserve. So I decided before Simchas Torah, before we finished the entire Torah that we read, of course, in Shul, I'm going to print out every single page of my notes from this past year's Parsha Podcast. And guess what? It amounted to 509 pages. I printed them in 3 loose leaves. And then I said, you know what? We're finishing the Torah in Shul. Simchas Torah. And thank God we did an entire cycle of the Parsha Podcast. We finished the Torah essentially together on the Parsha Podcast. I'm going to dance with my notes on Simchas Torah. And I was a little embarrassed because it's kind of weird thinking I was dancing with the Torah scrolls. And I have this like loose leaf. So I flipped it backwards so no one could see what I'm dancing with. And I did a little dance on Simchas Torah to celebrate the completion of the 5th year of the Parsha Podcast, the 5th cycle. But now it is time for the 6th cycle. The 6th cycle, could you believe it? There are going to be some innovations, some changes. I made a very tough programming decision. I decided last year we did the A and Q, and we're going to table the A and Q for this year. I came up with a new segment. I'm calling it, instead of the A and Q answers the questions, I'm calling it the EI, the exquisite insight. I want to share, please God, every week, a short, incredible idea, maybe even a Kabbalistic idea, a nugget on the Parsha that will enhance our relationship with the Torah, enhance our relationship with the Parsha, an amazing insight. Let me know what you think of the change. If you are dead set on hearing the A and Q again, I'll tell you it is not a fait accompli. I'm still somewhat persuadable. If you really wish that we continue the A and Q this year, send me an email. If there is enough of a response, I'll consider it. But right now, let us begin the new cycle with the help of the Almighty. We pray and hope that we should have as much success this year as we had last year, maybe even more. And we thank you all. I thank you for listening, for spreading the word, for your 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast. And let's begin. Today I want to share with y'all 2 what I think are fascinating and interconnected ideas that will radically reshape our understanding of Torah and Mitzvos, and also put into perspective what's the purpose of creation, what's the purpose of Genesis. You know, the whole parsha is so bizarre. 31 verses to describe all of creation. It's obviously not comprehensive and completely inclusive. What role do we have to play in this? What should we take away from this? We're going to try to do that today. Is that A bit too ambitious? Of course it is. But you listen and you tell me if I'm overselling what we're trying to do today. So let's begin just to get into the whole subject. Let's begin with the verse in the beginning of the Torah, chapter 1, verse 26 and 27. These verses essentially have mountains of commentary on them. There are entire books written to just explain what these verses mean, but I think it will serve as a fitting introduction to this podcast, to the inaugural maiden episode of the 6th cycle of the Parsha Podcast. And this is describing the creation of man. Vayomer Elokim, and God said, let us make man b'tzalmeinu kidmusenu, in our image, in our likeness. Let's create a human. And indeed, Vayivra Elokim es Adam, God created man b'tzalmo, in his image. B'tselem Elokim, in the image of God, he created man, male and female. This is, of course, a very shocking and stunning and befuddling and gobsmacking idea that man is created in the image of God in some way, shape, or form. Man is in some capacity comparable to God. Man is created in the image of God. What commonality does man have with the divine? It's not immediately obvious from the verse what exactly is being conveyed here. Another oddity that will again help us edge into the subject of today is that after all the creations, it says a declaration, God saw that he made, or all that he made, and behold, it was good. Vayar Elokim ki tov, it was good. Yet with the creation of man, and man, as we know, is the ultimate purpose of the entirety of Genesis, there is no declaration, as there are by other themes, Vayar Elokim ki tov, God saw and behold it was good. There is no such declaration. Of course, raises some eyebrows. If man is the purpose of creation, and in every other aspect of creation, the Torah and the Almighty does declare that it was good, how come that declaration is omitted when it comes to the creation of man? So let's probe this subject a bit deeper. Are you ready? Let us begin. The Talmud in the book of Sanhedrin, page 38a, this is a Talmud we mentioned in the past, still fascinating. The Talmud says, why was Adam created last? If you look at the creation, you have, of course, day 1, day 2, day 3, 4, 5, and 6. At the end of day 6, after all the animals and all the stars and all the galaxies and the heaven, the earth, the waters, the upper waters, the lower waters, the firmament, everything's done. The fish, the birds, the creepy crawlers, it's all done. The very last thing that the Almighty creates in the 6 days is man. Asks the Talmud, why was man created last? And the Talmud gives 4 answers, but the first answer is really a head scratcher. Why? Why was Adam created last? So that way the heretics should not say that God had a partner with him in creation. What an amazing idea. Had man been created on Tuesday, or Wednesday, or Monday, or Sunday, had man been created earlier, before the rest of creation, there would be a concern that the heretics would say, oh, God didn't create all those other things by himself. Man helped God. Man was God's partner. That would have been a concern. And therefore, in order to avoid that problem, God said, you know what? I'm going to make man last. And if he wasn't around by all those creations, no one could ever claim that man was the partner with God in making the birds and making the galaxies and making the fish and making the animals and making the creeper crawlers and making the sun and the moon and the various other constellations. No one can make such a claim anymore. Now, this is obviously a head scratcher because, wait a minute, what exactly is the concern? Man cannot be a creator. Why is there this concern? Why are we worried? Oh, if man came earlier, then there would be some legitimacy to the claim of the heretics to say that man helped God, man partnered with God. What's the concern? So from this Talmud, we find something fascinating, really two fascinating ideas. Evidently, man can be a creator. And therefore, had man, so to speak, preceded day 6, someone or the heretics could have said that man partnered with God. Man has that power. This is a massive insight. Of course, it demands an explanation. But it's evident from the Talmud that had man preceded day 6, there would have been some legitimacy, some grounds for the claims of the heretics that man aided God, man participated with God, man partnered with God in creation. What an astonishing idea. Man could be a creator to a certain extent. What does that mean? We have to explain. That's idea number 1 from this Talmud. But he isn't. He came last, and therefore he did not create the world or even aid God, partner with God, help God in any way. He came last. He came after everything was done. Now here's where it gets interesting. I found 3 sources in the Talmud and the Midrash that say explicitly that man indeed can partner with God. So again, the Talmud says that man was created last, so no one should claim that man partnered with God in creation. Yet I found 3 sources, and I will give you chapter and verse so you can look it up to make sure that I'm not pulling some wool over you. I'm not cheating here. There's no chicanery here. The 6th year of the Parsha Podcast is going to start with me giving you sources, chapter and verse, where to find what I'm saying, so you know it's legit. Don't trust me. Don't trust me. Don't get lulled into complacency and say, oh, Wolbe's been around for 5 years, read the Parsha Podcast. He's reliable. No. Check the sources. See if I'm making this up. Again, the Talmud, Sanhedrin 38a, says that the heretics claim, or would have claimed, that man partnered with God. Oh, no, but that's not possible because man was created last. So we see from that man, theoretically, could be a creator. It's just that he wasn't around, and therefore he couldn't have been a creator. Yet, we found 3 sources that man indeed is a partner with God in creation. Source number 1, the Midrash in Bereishis Rabbah 43:7. It's talking about Abraham and Abraham's kindness and benevolence and generosity and hospitality with the passerby. And it says that Abraham would be so welcoming to the passerby, and he would feed them and give them to drink. And when they finished, he would say, bless. And they would say, what do you mean bless? Who should I bless? What should I bless? How should I bless? And he says, what you should say is, Baruch kel olam, blessed is the creator of the world, she'achalnu mishalo, that we have eaten from his goodness, from his gifts to us. That's how the patriarch Abraham would imbue the passerby with faith. He, of course, emerges in a world where the knowledge of God is almost non-existent, and he does hospitality, and via his hospitality, he makes others proclaim God as well. Concludes the Midrash. Amar l'Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Almighty said to Abraham, Ani, me, i.e. God, lo hayesh mi nikar l'briosai, my name was not known to my creations. And you made me, i.e. God, known to my creations. I am going to consider it as if you were a partner with me in the creation of the world. The exact words that the Talmud, the Book of Sanhedrin, page 38a says, we're concerned. Had Adam been created before Friday, that concern, those exact words appear by Abraham. Abraham was like a shutaf, like a partner with God in creation of the world. Now, just to be completely precise, the Talmud says that the concern of the heretics, the heresy problem, is where you would say that man was a partner. With Abraham, it says he was like a partner. So it's not identical, but the principle is the same. The Talmud says that man could be a partner, could be a creator. He just wasn't. And now we see what that means, where man acts to a certain extent like a creator, partners with God. Who is the exemplar of that? Abraham, when he made the name of God known by the passerby, he was like a partner with God in creation. God was unknown in his world, and man, i.e. Abraham, he partnered with God to make God known in the world. And it's as if, says the Midrash, it's as if Abraham partnered with God in creating the world. There's a very deep insight here. God, of course, created the world, but he did not complete the creation. He left some work for us to do, and he wants us to partner with him in finishing creation. We said man is in the image of God. Just as God created the world, we too can have a share in finishing, in completing, in perfecting that creation. Abraham did it. God was unknown. The passerby didn't know that they had a creator. And that's a flaw. That's a lacking. That's a gap. There's something missing in the creation. Of course, it's a deliberate flaw. The Almighty wants us to remedy this flaw. But by doing that, by Abraham publicizing the name of God in the world, Abraham became God's partner in completing creation. That is the power of man. That's what it means to be created in the image of God. It means, just like God created, you created in the image of God, Abraham created in the image of God, partnered with God in completing this creation. Maybe we could even say that there's like the 99% of creation and then there's the 1%. Had Adam preceded the end of the 6 days, someone could have said, the heretics could have said, hey, if man can partner with God to finish the creation, well, maybe man aided God in creation itself. And that's why man had to be created last. 99% of creation was done by God alone without man even existing at that time. But that last 1%, or maybe the 0.0000001%, is up to us to complete. We must complete creation. We must partner with God in finishing what he started. God wants us to be part of the 1%. That is the essence of man. That's what it means to be created in the image of God. God created a partner in creation. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, the answer is that it's not yet determined. We get the choice. We have the free will to decide whether or not we're going to partner with God. We have the choice and we have the opportunity. But we can also, of course, neglect that awesome responsibility and that awesome opportunity. And therefore, it cannot yet be determined whether or not it's a good thing. Is humanity a good thing or not? Well, God has partners. Are those good partners or bad partners? That depends on whether we do what it is that we were created to do, namely to partner with God, to complete creation, to be a creator, to complete what God started. Our mission, perhaps we can say, is to apply the classification, V'hinei tov ma'od, and behold, it was good, to apply that to ourselves. Abraham shows us how to become a partner. We have to plug in the gap that's missing. We have to publicize God in the world. We have to make his name known to all. You do that, and you are God's partner. What an amazing idea. You are aiding God, so to speak, partner with God to complete what he started, to do that 1%. That's the first instance where this terminology of man being God's partner is featured. Here are the other two. In the Talmud, in the book of Shabbos, page 119b, we read the following astonishing statement. Amar Rav Amnuna. Rav Amnuna says, whoever prays on the eve of Shabbos, and they say Vayichulu, and they quote the verse in our Parsha that the creation took 6 days, and on day 7, God ceased to create. Male Allah, because of the scripture considers it as if, ki'ilu, as if, na'aseh shutav l'kadosh baruch hu ma'aseh Bereishis. He became a partner with God in creation. Again, an astonishing idea. Partnering with God, creation's over and done with. No. There is still work to be done. Abraham found a world where God was not present. the knowledge of God was not ubiquitously known to all. And Abraham started the process of partnering with God to finish that. And that is what Shabbos is all about. Shabbos is to make godliness known here, to proclaim godliness in this world, to make this world indistinguishable from the spiritual world, to create parity between the heavenly realm and here, to unite the two disparate worlds, to transform this world that, by default, denies God into one that exhibits, that manifests him. Shabbos is testimony that God is the creator. And by us making that declaration, we, like Abraham, of course, with the passerby, we're partnering with God. That's the second source where this terminology is featured. The third source is in, again, the book of Shabbos, the Talmud book of Shabbos, page 10a. Kol dayan, every judge who judges a case brought before them completely to the truth, completely justly, completely righteously. Even if you do that only for 1 hour, says the Talmud, the Torah considers it as if you became a partner with God in Genesis, in creation. And it brings a source. It says over here by Moses that Moses judged the nation from morning to evening. And it says by creation, by Genesis, the God, Vayer Vayiboker, it was morning, it was evening. Oh, we find out from that by judging righteously, it is equivalent to a certain extent to creation. What does this mean? It's the same principle. There's a dispute. There is a court case. There is uncertainty. There is opacity. And a judge's role is to illuminate what the will of God is in this case. He is tasked with revealing what the will of the Almighty is. In effect, he is bringing God into an area where there was a dispute that was challenged. The principle, the will of the Almighty was not agreed upon by all, and the judge infuses the knowledge and the recognition of the will of God into this case, and that's very similar to Shabbos, very similar to what Abraham did. You are infusing godliness into this world. And Moses, of course, did that. Moses, as, of course, the exemplar, as the paradigmatic example of a judge who was righteous, he was a partner with God. So maybe we can even say we have 3 levels. With respect to Shabbos, the book of Shabbos, page 119, if someone makes a declaration of Shabbos, that is personal testimony that God exists. And that makes you a partner. And then you have righteous judgment. That's when someone is enacting the will of God in this world, like Moses did, making sure that the world operates in accordance with the divine will. And that too is partnering with God. And then there's the third example, which is exemplified by Abraham, publicizing the name of God in the world, making others aware of this grand principle, and that too renders a person into a partner. In all of these 3 instances, man is partnering with God. Man is actualizing man's superpower of being created in the image of God. Man is determining that it is Titov, that behold, it is good that he was created. Regarding God's partners, it can be definitively said, behold, it was good. Now, there are some amazing perks of partnership. If you are God's partner, there's some amazing benefits that you get. The Talmud says, in the book of Shabbos, again, page 63a, a person who does a mitzvah, again, the fulfillment of God's will, another example of partnering with God. If someone does a mitzvah as it is written, as it was instructed, says the Talmud, afilu hakadosh baruch hu gozer gzeira, even if God decrees a decree, hu mevatla, that person who does a mitzvah can annul that decree. And it quotes a series of verses. Umi yomer lo ma ta'aseh, one verse says, and who could tell God what to do? And a subsequent verse says, shomer mitzvah lo yeda davara. So Rashi explains what this means is, who can dictate to God and tell God what to do? Someone who is observant of the mitzvos. What an amazing idea. God renders a decree. And a person who does mitzvos can annul that decree. This sounds heretical, right? This sounds like crazy. But again, I'm telling you where it says. Chapter verse, the book of Talmud, Shabbos, page 63a. What this means is that you can tell God what to do, provided that you are his partner. God's partners have a say. They cannot be ignored. An amazing idea. Man can override God. God wants to make a decree. You say, no, I'm sorry. Why? Because I'm a partner. You created the world. You left me some work to do as well. And therefore, if I do that, as exemplified in this example, someone who does a mitzvah as it's intended, I'm a partner with you. And a partner has a say as well. Of course, the vast majority of humanity are not partners. They're not partners with the Almighty, and therefore they hold no sway over the divine decisions. This is the reason why, by the way, people traditionally go to the righteous for blessings. Someone's righteous. They indeed are a partner with the Almighty, and therefore they carry weight in determining what will happen to people. God makes a decree, and the tzaddik, the righteous person, can annul it. Most people, the vast majority of humanity, they're not partners. We call them maybe extras. They're extras. They're bystanders of creation. Regarding them, it cannot be definitively said that their creation was good. They are not utilizing and implementing and actualizing their superpower of being created in the image of God. They have not yet actualized that, and therefore they really carry no sway. What an amazing idea. God created the world, but left it a bit rough, a bit unpolished, a bit unfinished. The world is still not perfect because his presence is not tangible and palpable to all. We need to finish the job. We are his partners in finishing creation. Now, there's another source I want to just throw out there. The Maharal in the book called Tiferes Yisrael, chapter 69, he goes a bit further. He says, in every aspect of creation, man needs to complete and process and develop, so to speak, what God started, what God created. Every mitzvah that we do, we're elevating and perfecting and completing an aspect of creation. And what happens when we're done? What happens when we've partnered with God to such a degree that we have completed creation? When the world is perfected, we have a name for that. The name for that, of course, is Messiah. And isn't it noteworthy that the three instances in the literature where it talks about people partnering with God, well, one example is Abraham, and the second example is Moses, and the third example is someone who keeps Shabbos. And the Talmud tells us that keeping Shabbos, that is the way to effectuate, to beget, to bring about Messiah. And we know, this is a principle we spoke about in the past, that there are three levels of revelation. The first revelation is Abraham. He was the first one to partner with God. The next level of revelation is Torah, Sinai, is Moses. And the final level of revelation is Messiah. And that is when the world, the mission of the world has been perfected, it's been completed, and we can move on to the next epoch of history. There are three levels of revelation, which is another word for completion, for perfection, and the definition of Messiah is when the world has been completed, when we did our job, when we finished that 1%, when we actualized our superpowers of being created in God's image, when we've determined once and for all that our being created, behold, it was good, and we have this triumvirate of Abraham and Moses and Messiah. This is the triumvirate of partnership. What an empowering and demanding idea. There is unfinished business for us to do. We must fix the world with the kingdom of God. 99% of the world has been done by God alone. In that, he had no partner. Adam was created afterwards with the responsibility, with the mission to finish the 1%. We must do that. As Jews, we are told, we are trained Chaviv in Yisrael, praiseworthy is Israel. We have the greatest implement, the greatest tool of creation. We have the Torah. We were given the Kli Chemda, the precious tool that they might have used to create the world. We have Torah. We are armed, not just with being created in the image of God as any other human, but we have the superpower. We actually have the knowledge of exactly what we need to do to complete that. That was given to us. Every mitzvah that we do forever changes the world and all the other spiritual worlds as well. We must partner with God. I want to take this a step further. After all, it's the first maiden episode of the 6th cycle of the Parsha Podcast. I have to give you something really juicy and meaty. And by the way, there's even more of that yet to come in the Exquisite Insight segment of the podcast. And of course, I had less time to edit, less time to work on it, so I'm going to give you more than I would typically give you. Listen to this. Chapter 5, verse 1. Zeh Sefer Toldos Ha'adam. This is the book of the Chronicles of Adam. What this means, Rashi tells us, what this means is, this is the family, the lineage, the progeny of Adam. And then Rashi adds, Umidrashi Agada. And if you want to look at the Agadic Midrash, Yesh Rabim, there's a lot of Agadic Midrash literature on this verse. What it actually means, this is the book of the Chronicles of Adam. So, if you look at the Talmud, this is featured in Sanhedrin 38b and in Avodah Zarah 5a. We read the following astonishing, surprising, and perplexing statement regarding this book of chapter 5, verse 1. Zeh Sefer Toldos Ha'adam. This is the book of the Chronicles of Men. Says the Talmud, there's actually a book called the Chronicles of Man. And God showed this book to Adam. And in this book, it shows dar, v'darshav, generation and generation, and those who are going to elucidate the generation. And dar v'chachamav, every generation and its wise people. Every generation and its leaders. Every generation and the people who are going to make an impact in that generation. And that book that details the history and the chronicles of man was shown to Adam. It was shown to one person as well, one other person as well, to Moses. We'll get to that in a second. And Adam had no comment, essentially, on all that he saw, with the exception, says the Talmud, of when he saw the generation of Rabbi Akiva. Once he arrived at the generation of Rabbi Akiva, samach b'toraso v'nesatzev b'misaso. He was happy, he was gladdened in the Torah of Rabbi Akiva, but he was sad, he was depressed, he was upset, bothered by the death of Rabbi Akiva. This is an amazing insight here. There's a book called the Book of Adam, the Book of the Chronicles of Adam, and it has all the secrets of what's going to happen throughout history. Obviously, this is a great mystery. You may just wonder, of course, is there an entry for us? And what exactly does it say about us? It's very mysterious. And it raises all kinds of questions. Why did God show this to Adam? Why did God show it to Moses? Why are they broken up into generations? When exactly did God show this to Adam? How does this not tamper with free will? This is a window into God's perspective of history. If we would see it, our free will would get corrupted. And it's interesting, only Adam and Moses are documented to have seen this book, and there's a reason why only they could see it. But there's an interesting observation I want to share with you. I want to connect it to the previous idea of being God's partner. There are 3 people who are mentioned specifically in this book. So the Talmud says, again, the book of Sanhedrin, page 38b, it says that Adam saw Rabbi Akiva and was happy with his Torah and saddened with his demise. In the Zohar, this is Bereishis 55a, it says that Adam saw David, and he saw that David was going to die in childbirth, and he dedicated or conveyed 70 years of Adam's life were apportioned to David, and that's why David lived to be 70. And Adam, who was supposed to live to 1,000, died 70 years prior to his intended date of death at the age of 930. Of course, this is very interesting that Adam was so concerned about David. Adam was so worried about David dying in childbirth, and he felt so connected to him, he was willing to apportion 70 years of his life to David. And of course, it raises other questions. What's at least the mechanism of giving over years of your life to someone else? So what's the nature of conveying life years to someone else? But we have Rabbi Akiva being featured. We have David being featured. And there is a third person who is featured in this book that we know for sure. The Midrash tells us that Moshe saw the same book. And again, in this book, Dar V'Shoftav, every generation and its judges, every generation and its teens, every generation and its wise people, every generation and its leaders, every generation and those who teach and those who enforce and those who are the financial leaders of the nation. And even, we're told in the Midrash, every generation and its thieves and its crooks and its wicked people, every generation and its prophets. But the Ramban tells us that when Moshe was told to go build the Mishkan, the tabernacle, God tells him, I want you to use a young boy named Bezalel to be your lead contractor. And the verse says, Re'ei karasi b'shem Bezalel ben Ur mechur. See, look, visualize Bezalel. Says the Ramban, quoting from a Midrash, God showed Moshe the book of Adam. And in the book of Adam, it says there's going to be a generation in which the Mishkan is built, and it's going to be built by Bezalel ben Uri ben Hur from the tribe of Judah. So we have three people who are mentioned specifically in this book: King David, Bezalel, and Rabbi Akiva. And I want to speculate with y'all on this maiden episode of the 6th cycle of the Parsha Podcast. I want to speculate with y'all that these three people really represent the idea of partnering with God in this world. Think about it. David, of course, is the monarchy, but is the Messiah. Messiah, we said, is completing the mission of partnering with God. Bringing God into this world is culminated. When that is done, that's the revelation of Messiah. Bezalel, he built the Mishkan, the temple, the tabernacle. That is a terra firma representation of God. It's a domicile for God here. It's actually remedying the same problem that Abraham was working on. People don't know about God. That is actualized in the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And Rabbi Akiva, he is the father of the oral Torah. Talmud says that all of oral Torah that we have came to us via Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is to oral Torah what Moshe is to written Torah. And oral Torah, of course, that is the human contribution. That's us partnering with the divine. The written Torah, it's completely the work of God. It's part of that 99%. The 1%, that's the oral Torah. And who contributed to the codification, formalization, perpetuation of the oral Torah? Number one on that list is Rabbi Akiva. So these three people represent more than anyone else the greatest examples of realities in this world of exhibiting God, of making this world a domicile for God, of bringing God and Torah and God's presence in this world. That is the book of Adam. That's the story and the destiny of Adam. Adam was created and it wasn't determined that it was good. Why? Because we don't know if it will be good. The book of Adam, that is the story. That is the mission. That is the mandate. That is the destiny of Adam to complete the world, to partner with God and complete what he started. And Adam is really worried about this. He's really worried about David. What's going to be if David is born, dies right away? Well, then there's going to be a flaw that's going to be unremediable because Messiah won't exist, because the Davidic line won't exist. He's saying, I'm willing to give up anything in order to be determined about us, about humanity, that behold, it is good. that we're living up to the mission that we have, that we are indeed utilizing the superpower of being created in the image of God. What an amazing idea. What a way to start the Parsha Podcast 5782. What a way to start the Sitch cycle. What a way to start the Torah. We were created with powers unrivaled by even the angels. We're created in the image of God. The Almighty expects of us to complete what He started. He did almost everything, but there is a little bit of polish for us to do. He wants us to bring His name in the world, to perfect the world, to fix the world. That is our mission. And by doing that, it can be said upon us that God saw us, and behold, it was good. Let us be partners and not extras. Now, before we get to the new segment of exquisite insights, I want to just answer the question of the last A&Q of last year. We asked the question, why, when the Torah is eulogizing Moshe and delineating all his great qualities and all his great attributes and all the amazing things that he did for the Jewish people and for the world, why does it throw in this barb that when they mourned him, it wasn't quite like the mourning given to Aaron? It seems inappropriate to have a little bit of criticism, even though it's, of course, we take it. Of course, we take only being mourned by the males of Israel, not the females. We take it, but still, it seems inappropriate when the Torah is praising Moshe to have a little bit of critique, or at least to say he's not as great or wasn't as beloved as Aaron. So the Maril Diskin, who was the chief rabbi of the town of Brisk and eventually Jerusalem, he said an amazing idea, a very famous idea that he said about this question. He says, actually, the Torah is praising Moshe. The Torah is praising Moshe by saying that he was a complete leader, and even though some of his decisions were unpopular, he did them nonetheless. The fact that not everyone wanted to mourn Moshe, that is indeed one of Moshe's accolades. That's one of his great qualities, because a leader has to sometimes make tough decisions because that's what's appropriate. And you know what? If they're not popular, it doesn't matter. I have to do what's right. If I'm a true leader, like Moshe was, you have to do things that are unpopular. And the fact that he was, to a certain degree, at least relative to Aaron, unpopular, that indeed is a feather in his cap. A rabbi who no one wants to fire is probably not making enough of those tough decisions, those unpopular decisions that are the rabbi's mandate. To be a leader means to take a stand and to do things that may be unpopular, at least to some of the people, but they are correct. And thus it is praise for Moshe. It shows that Moshe has a backbone. He was willing to do unpopular things. Okay, let's get to this week's exquisite insight. This is something we're going to start off. Hopefully we'll be able to do it the whole year. Find an idea that's just a mind-blowing idea. Hopefully it'll be short, not something too long. The one I have for this week is a little bit longer than what I envision this segment being. But you let me know if you like it. If you really, really insist on continuing the A&Q, convince me, persuade me. My email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. Okay, so in our Parsha, we have, of course, the sin of Adam and Eve in the garden. And then we have the dispensing of punishment, of consequences as a result to the snake, to Adam, and to Eve. In chapter 3, verse 18, we read, V'kotz v'dardar tatzmiach lach. There will be thorns, there will be thistles that will spread out. You'll have to weed the fields. You're trying to plant, you want wheat, you want barley, and you get all kinds of other things that are not edible. You got to pluck them all out. It's going to be very difficult for you to make a living. It's going to be very difficult for you to bring out produce and grain because you're going to have the coats and the dardar. Now, the Bnei Yisachar, one of the great classic Hasidic works, he has an amazing piece on this verse. The coats and the thorn, the dardar, and weeds will sprout out. So a little bit of background. So, of course, there's the principle of gematria. We've talked about that many times. It's very helpful to know how the gematria system works. But the word coats, which means a thorn, is a gematria 196. And the word dar, which is really dar twice, each dar is, dalet is 4, and resh is 200, so it's 4 and 200, 204. Now, the word coats, which means a thorn, just is very helpful to know, to understand this idea. Coats also means like a serif. So you have a serif, which is like a little dash or a little dot at the end of a letter, like a kutso shel yud. The little bit, the little jot that comes out of the yud is called the kutso shel yud, the coat, so to speak, the thorn of the yud, which is the little serif that comes out of the top of the yud. So here's the idea that the Bnei Yissaschar says, an amazing idea. Originally, man was someone who did good naturally. All evil was disdainful in the eyes of man. And then man eats from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. And now there is a mix-up. There is good and bad operating within him, and it's almost indiscriminate, and you don't really know what's good, what's bad, what should I embrace, what should I avoid. And of course, the objective of Torah is to illuminate before us, to guide us, to instruct us what's good that we should embrace, we should adopt, we should adhere to, and what's bad, that's dangerous, that's fire, that's poison, that'll kill us, and we should, of course, avoid. And that's the objective of Torah, and that's why it says about the Torah, behold, I have placed before you life and good and bad and death. Embrace life, choose life, and avoid death, avoid bad. And with every decision that we make, we are either embracing good and veering towards God, or we are embracing bad and veering away from God and veering to idolatry. And then he says something very fascinating. There's 2 verses in the Torah that are descriptions of the opposite choices that we can make. One of them is the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. God is one. And that, of course, is when we choose good. We're embracing God as our master. Hashem Echad, God is one. And that is, of course, the good choice to make. Now, if you look in chapter 4 of Deuteronomy, where it says that verse, the Daled is enlarged. It's like almost like when you make for a child. You make big letters. You have 11 letters in the Torah that are enlarged. One of the enlarged letters is the Daled of the word Echad. Echad, one. There is another verse that says, Lo yihiyeh b'cha el zar. You should not have within you a foreign god. Velo sishtachaveh le'el acher. You should not bow down to a different god. The word acher means different. And also in that verse, the resh, the resh, which is the last letter of the word acher, another god, different god, a foreign god, that resh is also enlarged. And he says something fascinating. The difference between the word echad, one, i.e. God, and the word acher, other, foreign god, the complete opposite of that, one of them, they both start with the same first 2 letters, aleph ches, echad, acher. The difference is the daled versus the resh. With the word echad, God is one, it's a daled. And with the word acher, a different one, it's a resh. Now, if you know what a daled looks like and a resh looks like, they are almost identical. If you look at them, like an old printing of a book where the printing wasn't quite as crisp, sometimes the daled looks like a resh looks like a daled. The only difference between the 2 is that, both of them have a vertical line, and then at the top of the vertical line, you have a line going to the left. The difference is that a daled also has a little serif going to the right as well, whereas the resh does not have that. They're almost identical in how they look. So here's the idea. The difference between echad and acher, for us, now post the sin of Adam, it's so hard for us to tell the difference. It's so hard. They look so similar. The difference, says the Bnei Yissaschar, is the coats. The coats, which means, again, the thorn in our verse, but coats also means a serif. The difference between the 2 is a serif. That's it. Just the serif on the top right, so to speak, of the letter. The daled has it, and the resh does not have it. And here's another amazing thing. What is the difference in gematria between the daled and the resh? Daled is 4, resh is 200. The difference between the 2 is 196, i.e. coats, which is, again, exactly 196. So coats is the difference between the Dalet and the Reish, between the Echad and the Acher, between the big Dalet and the big Reish, where the Torah is telling you, don't confuse these two. Look, I'm making them bigger for you. Don't confuse the two. Do Hashem Echad and don't do El Acher, don't do a different God. That's the difference. And they're different in how they look. One has the coats and one doesn't. And they're also different from each other. The Dalet and the Reish, they're different in the gematria. One has a coats and one does not have a coats. And the Torah is telling us, now, the consequences of Adam's sin is that there's coats vidar dar. Dar dal means dalad reish. We are going to confuse the dalad with the reish and the reish with the dalad. And that's the result. That's the consequence of his behavior. Coats vidar dar. That's the problem. Now there's the coats. There's this little tiny thing, this small serif separating the dalad and the reish. And now they're all conflated, mishmashed together. And now the dar, we have this dar, which is, again, it literally means the weeds, but the Dalet and the Reish are now helplessly entangled. It's a big problem. We don't know, are we doing Hashem Echad? Are we following the will of God? Are we doing just good? Or are we maybe, God forbid, now veering off the path and we're following El Acher, a different God? We are doing idolatry. What an amazing little piece. Now we connected, of course, the golden calf. Lech raid, with the sin of the golden calf, God tells Moshe, go descend. The word raid is a reish and a dalet, the same two letters of dar. And he connects it to two. Of course, in the past we've spoken about how the sin of the golden calf is emblematic of the sin of Adam. It's the conflation of the reish and the dalet. And the Torah is telling us, hey, I'm taking these letters, I'm making them really big. Don't get them confused. Make sure you, so to speak, undo the dar, the coats and the dar of Adam. No, you should embrace Hashem Echad, and you should eschew El Acher, a different God. What are your thoughts? Do you like this new format? Send me an email regardless. My email address is rabbiwolb@gmail.com. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your incredible support throughout the years and for being with me, persevering for the first episode of the Sitch Cycle of the Parsha Podcast. Have an amazing rest of your day and a fabulous Shabbos. And may this be a year of tremendous blessing to all of us in the Parsha Podcast family.